This is HBR News number 502. U.S. has problem with air traffic control. Soros-Funded groups pro-child trafficking, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. Hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you're not consumed by it. I am your host, Brian, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Hannah and Dr. Ranmercam. On today's HBR News show, we're going to be talking about, well, actually, there's a lot to discuss. We have a lot of stories, so we're going to try and, keep it slim because we get sometimes we get last minute add-ons and things that we want to touch on briefly. But in part, we're going to be talking about some developments regarding the issues with air traffic control, some developments involving the Maryland man, Kilmar Garcia, that is, and some stuff dealing with Trump. And I, in particular, I want to talk a little bit about this latest modern art installation that's been doing the rounds that people have been talking about. And I think that there is something that they might be missing about that and more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron only show. So last week on the news show, we did some of this article from The Guardian, entitled "Now Comes the Womanosphere," the anti-feminist media telling women to be thin, fertile, and Republican. And we got through, I want to say like half of it. So we're going to do the other half of it today, where I think they're going to be delving a little bit more into like why this womanosphere is so scary, especially for women, and, what must be done to stop them, which I assume, involves state-backed censorship or something. So if you want to join us for that, you have to become a member or just become a Badger by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe. $5 a month will get you into our Discord server, where you'll be able to watch all of the additional content and hang out with our lovely community of spurgs, nerds, and weirdos. And but it's better than I made it sound. I don't think I did a good job selling it just then.
Well, I will say y'all missed a really lively discussion about it last week. The beginning part of the article that we read and everything. But if you join, you'll be able to go back and listen to it. Mm-hmm. So there is that as well. It's not just being able to join in the current and future after shows. You also will be able to listen to the archives.
Yes, you'll have access to all of the additional content.
And frankly, if you're not into spurgs, nerds, and weirdos, then you're missing out on life.
Yeah, those are the most fun people on earth.
Yeah, for sure. So, please consider doing that. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, which, could still happen, then look for our archived content at honeybadgerradio.com or badgerfeed.com. Allison made too many websites. I'm just going to keep saying that until she trims it down to like one. One website should be able to hold all of this stuff. But
I like the fact that honeybadgerbrigade.com has a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And badgerfeed.com, if I understand correctly, now redirects to honeybadgerbrigade.com. So that's the place to go. You can find it all at honeybadgerbrigade.com.
Yes.
One website to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them.
The darkness. We don't have darkness.
That's right. It is darkness for sure. All right. Anyway, so with all that said, that should be a fun patron show. The Womanosphere. We'll check that out. But in the meantime, let's get into today's story. So first, we're going to be talking about this. Okay, so the United States is grappling with a severe air traffic control crisis, experiencing approximately 1,000 equipment failures every week, according to insiders cited in a New York Post article dated May 7th, 2025. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, is struggling with outdated systems, some dating back to the 1940s, including analog radio systems and ancient radar technology. These failures have led to significant disruptions, such as a recent 90-second blackout at Newark Liberty International Airport, one of the busiest in the nation, highlighting the fragility of the current infrastructure. The situation is compounded by a chronic shortage of air traffic controllers, with staffing levels at critical airports like Newark falling below the FAA's 85% minimum threshold, forcing controllers to work grueling 10-hour days and 6-day weeks. The crisis has prompted calls for reform, with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announcing plans to modernize the system by replacing 618 radars, building 6 new air traffic control centers, and upgrading communications with fiber optic, wireless, and satellite systems. However, critics, including aviation expert Michael Boyd, argue that these measures may not address the root issues, pointing to decades of underinvestment and mismanagement by the FAA. The article underscores a broader impact on air travel, with United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby noting that Newark's understaffing and equipment issues make it unable to handle scheduled flight volumes, leading to delays and safety concerns. As the FAA aims to hire 1,800 new controllers this year, the ongoing strain on the system continues to raise alarms about the safety and reliability of U.S. air travel. And nothing makes me feel more confident about my flight this Thursday, or is it, Thursday, I believe. No, Friday morning, than reading this story. So I'm going to be flying from Roanoke to Chicago for my late friend's celebration of life event, and I'm going to be flying there. So I just pray for me if you pray to anybody, Buddha, whatever. So anyway, yeah, that's the story. But
yeah,
go
we'll
ahead.
definitely.
So it's not DEI, right? It's I've noticed the article skated around that without mentioning it. I don't know if that's because none of the available sources have done anything but skate around that and talk about anything but that. But if we know anything about what's been happening with the aviation industry, it's that it's been somewhat sullied by DEI recently, right? Is there everything to do with it? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what's going on there?
Actually, not only is DEI a part of the issue, one of the articles, and I don't remember which one, but one of the articles I think I posted in our chat actually mentions the fact that they haven't had in all of the money that American taxpayers have collectively paid, like billions annually. And by the way, when I say American taxpayers, I mean men, because collectively women don't pay taxes. Right? Collectively, men pay taxes, women benefit from them. But billions annually are paid into the FAA, and about $4 billion go into the Airport Improvement Program, which is a specific program that is intended to update this shit. And the equipment for making sure hundreds of people don't die in fiery crashes amid the thousands of flights a day is all outdated, because they can't afford to update that. But they can spend the money to dedicate it, to sustainable aviation fuels, which probably means, some climate change led green energy shit. And they had money to dedicate to energy emissions and sustainability products and improving air quality at commercial service airports. And they had money to dedicate to programs to increase the number of women in the industry. But they don't have money for new computer systems, new communication systems, new radar systems, the things that help to make sure the type of near accident that occurred on my flight to Calgary doesn't happen all the time. Right? When I was coming in for a landing on a jet that I was coming in for a landing on, the pilot all of a sudden stopped landing the plane and took us back up in the air, took us in such a tight spin up into the air that everybody, all inspired by me, of course, vomited, because I was first. I'm not too good with spinning. And then we continued to bank. We went, I know, all the way around in at least one circle, if not two or three, getting away from whatever it was that the pilot needed to get away from. And at the moment, we did not know. And it wasn't until we had landed safely that the pilot apologized to all of us and said WestJet had been hogging the runway. And what we found out was the control tower had been saying, no, they're not there. They're not there. They're not supposed to be there. We told them not to go out there. But the pilot of the WestJet jet that had been told not to go out there felt that it was their turn and they went out anyway, figuring the other pilot would see them and not start to land. And actually, we were already on our way down. So it really, really screwed everything up. There was luggage fell out. It was bad. And apparently that kind of thing happens every day. Scared the absolute fuck out of me. I will tell you that. I almost had other bodily fluids come out as well. That was a bad day. And the thing that struck me about it the most didn't strike me until weeks later when I remembered standing in my parents' living room years and years ago and watching a news report on an accident in which the pilot didn't see the jet on the runway and one jet landed on top of the other and everybody in both jets died in a fiery explosion. It is absolutely reprehensible. It is beyond description how reprehensible it is that this system has been allowed to get this bad. 95% or something like that of pilots, airline pilots, are men. Very, very few of them are women. Most women are either stewards or they work in air traffic control. They're about a quarter of air traffic controllers, or they work in other parts of the airport. They do not pilot jets, except for about 5%, maybe less. And so this puts the risk of the public dying at a very high level. And it also puts at a very high level of risk the lives of our pilots. Not everybody can do that job. You have to have perfect eyesight. There are obvious reasons why. And you have to have better than normal health. And there are obvious reasons why. Because if the pilot dies, everybody dies, right? So yeah, this is a huge men's issue. And the fact that our government is spending money on things that do not help to keep people safe at the expense of programs that do keep people safe is treason against the people of the country and needs to be fixed. So this is one of those situations where you look up how to contact the White House. It's not very difficult to get to the actual page where you can send the White House an electronic message and state as such that this needs to be a top priority, that people need to be able to travel within the United States and across our border legally without unusual fear of death, right? Without fearing that the systems that are supposed to facilitate that transportation are going to fail and everybody in the transport device is going to die. Because this is crazy. The technology that we have available today to us makes it such that this should never happen. Especially not in a profession where we are so heavily relying on men to do the most dangerous part of the job.
All right. Yeah, it's they're definitely talking around the problem in a lot of ways. I mean, when you think about where the money is going, instead of simple things like keeping everything up to date, making sure that you have not just that you have the right amount of people, but you have the best possible people. This is not a game. This is not something that you can, like play footsie with. You have to take this very seriously. Lives are at risk no matter what, kind of like transportation you're dealing with. It's that you have to take it very seriously. None of this like pie in the sky, like, stuff. And I do think that DEI played a role. We talked about the most recent tragedy. Well, at least the one. There were a couple of them. There was the crash in Canada that was coming from the States, where the plane turned upside down, and then there was the helicopter crash where the pilot essentially refused the advice of a man on the helicopter. I don't know, maybe because he's a man. That's what the speculation is. I don't know. But yeah, this is not something you can be, frivolous with. And the fact is that the more of this stuff happens, the more normal people take notice, and they start saying, does this have anything to do with people who are unfit for the position getting the position? And I'm seeing it more and more in my normal day-to-day life with regular people, that they talk about that. So, and I think that, I think that if it just so happens to be the best people for the job are men, then that's what it has to be. So, we just got to stop crying about that. But yeah, it's about where they invest, so like these companies are not investing where it matters. I think they spend a lot of money on these kind of programs and these initiatives. I don't know if, pilots have unions or anything like that, but I think that should be looked into if it's the case, because a lot of times these unions have an activist slant to them where they're trying to like push for. I know that in other industries that are more creative, like film, animation, television, unions will step in and they'll get the men fired, and then they'll replace them with women. And then like people remember when I know this is a bit of a digression, but remember when we covered all of the Me Too allegations that were floating around the Blizzard headquarters? You guys remember Blizzard? They used to make like, I guess they're still around. They do like World of Warcraft and stuff.
Yeah.
And there were all of these allegations that the environment was like this frat boy space where people were getting drunk and they were doing like parties, and the women were feeling really unsafe. And then
kind of like the Clinton White House.
Yeah, but this was like
except for that last bit, they didn't have a problem.
It was a frat boy environment, okay? And they said, I remember because I covered the story, and I said, I think that they're doing this to get these men fired and then take their jobs, and that the company would not survive because the most talented people are probably the ones that are going to lose their jobs. And over time, now recently, like last week, there was like people were saying, hey, remember that Blizzard thing? I think that's what killed them. It was like, yeah, I said that like years ago, and so I think that people are catching on now to that. And I think that, this is like indicative of that, what we're looking at with this story. So we will see, like, maybe there will be a revelation in the normie space at some point when they're like, oh, maybe, the unions, because they did this in animation and now animation is trash too. The unions could have, if there are any, I don't know, gotten involved, gotten some men fired or made allegations or whatever, or just said you have to change your staff to be, 50% women. We saw it happen in the military where, they said, oh, well, according to, rape statistics put out by Mary Koss, 1 in 4 women are raped. And we're looking in the military and we know you guys have a problem because we just presume it. So you obviously are not convicting enough men. So you have to convict more men. And so they're just convicting men. And that's how I did that whole series, which isn't complete. I'm going to be doing more of interviews with men in the military who have been falsely accused. And the only reason why the military is not sticking up for them is because they have it in their heads that they have to meet this quota that's put out, to them by these bullshit academics. And I have to wonder, like, whenever there's like some kind of rot in any industry that's killing it from the inside, you have to wonder, is there something ideological going on? And is that worth looking into? And so I wouldn't be surprised if we learn, more about this situation as well. I mean, especially if it's something prestigious where, people just want that clout. Oh, I work in the aviation industry. I'm a captain. I'm a pilot,
Yeah, by the way, the 2 biggest things we're going to see with that, we'll find out that there was all kinds of federal funding to create programs to get more women into the areas of airline work that were not traditionally female. And like I was pointing out from the other story, there will be all kinds of climate change bullshit that'll come up that we'll find out they were spending all kinds of money on alternative fuels and other similar things.
Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, but so that's just what I would say about it. But does anyone else have any other thoughts? We move on to the next one. We got a lot to go through. All right. So let's move on to the next story. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any super chows or anything or super chats. I don't see anything right now, but send us a super chow if you want to send us a message. feedthebadger.com/just the tip. And I'll be sure to read it as soon as I see it. All right. So, you guys probably heard of Maryland man Kilmar Garcia, who is a suspected MS13 gang member and illegal immigrant from El Salvador. And we have been hearing from some in the media that he is actually just a loving father who is being wrongfully treated by a system that doesn't believe in due process and other things. But it turns out that he's been at the center of a high-profile human trafficking case following a traffic stop in 2022 by the Tennessee Highway Patrol. As detailed in recent developments. Initially stopped for speeding, Garcia was found with 8 individuals in his vehicle and no luggage, raising suspicions of human trafficking. The Department of Homeland Security released an investigative report that confirmed these suspicions, noting Garcia's intent to transport the individuals from Texas to Maryland over a 3-day journey. However, Garcia was deported to El Salvador in March of 2025 under the Trump administration, which sparked debates over immigration and due process. Of course, if he's not a citizen, I think that there are limits on the due process thing, but maybe that we'll get into that. The latest developments reported on May 10th indicate that the House Homeland Security Chairman Mark Green is pressing Tennessee authorities to release unredacted video and reports from the traffic stop to further scrutinize the federal handling of Garcia's case. Green's request reflects concerns over transparency and accountability, as the incident has fueled broader discussions on immigration enforcement and human trafficking. A trooper's comment during the stop that Garcia was hauling these people for money underscored the trafficking allegations. Yet the deportation has complicated legal proceedings, leaving questions about Garcia's ultimate accountability unresolved. And it's also worth pointing out that I covered the part of this story that involved his supposed wife, who was essentially like, like sort of reading out a script of what she should say. I imagine that she is under threat of MS13, because we do know, like you'll notice in this photograph that we don't see his hands. He's got tattoos on his hands that say that he is with MS13. So this is not like up for debate, but the thing is, the media and the activists left, they're basically they try to find heroes in anyone that will support their cause. And that includes, men when applicable, but not really the kind of men that we want to, lionize. So anyway, anybody have thoughts on this case? Or are you guys there?
Yes,
yeah,
I'm going to let Hannah talk because I have a long rant to say about this.
So a lot of this, the information that is out there on this guy, people are just not talking about it, right? They're talking about it as if this was just somebody's everyday, ordinary neighbor who got grabbed for no reason by Border Patrol and was kicked out of the country without having done anything that should trigger getting kicked out of the country. Except that, he had a bunch of cash with him, in an inordinate amount. I can't remember what the number was, but it wasn't an amount of cash that you just carry around. When he was arrested, there were 2 other members of MS13 with him, and in addition, he has a rap sheet. He's not somebody who has never done anything, and they picked him up for no reason. On top of that, the wife who keeps saying, "Oh, he's not MS13," filed domestic violence charges against him, so she can't get her story straight either. Right? He's not a bad guy. Oh, by the way, he beats me. Okay, so which is it? And you always have to wonder, like, did she hit him? Did he? Is this one of those two-way things where, like, she starts it and then goes, "Oh, domestic violence," when he defends himself, but at the same time, here she is saying, "No, he's completely innocent. He's a completely good guy," out of one side of her face, and out of the other side, she's using the domestic violence victims advocacy system, because of him, or at least because of her allegations against him, and she's not a reliable witness as to the reasons we should or should not deport this man. So this story is clearly not being honestly portrayed by the establishment media. Now, regardless of all of the issues related to immigration and gang violence in the United States and law enforcement, border patrol, and all that, one thing that is that if the establishment media is all telling the same story, and it is not the truth, that there's a psyop going on. They are trying to fool you. They are trying to get you outraged over this against the administration in order to build up the other psyop that they're trying. Oh, all the Trump voters are feeling this regret for having voted. None of us are regretting our votes, guys. This is what we voted for. Getting criminals out of the country who were never supposed to be here to begin with is part of what we voted for. I wouldn't care if all this guy ever did was shoplift something from CVS. If he is not here legally and he has committed yet another crime beyond crossing the border illegally, get him out. That's it. That's it for me. I don't care about the rest of the details. For those of you that do, there are details you should care about. And one of them is the fact that you're being lied to by the establishment media. And that means that they have a goal in putting this story out there. So watch out for that. Don't fall for that shit.
All right, Mike, it's all yours.
Yes, you may have noticed that the establishment media, which we can go ahead and call the proverbial left, has been radio silent on this issue in the last 24 hours or so. And it's not because of any recent developments in the story. It's because they found something else to talk about. Having spent the last few weeks insisting that America is a nation of immigrants in which all refugees are welcome, they've taken a break from that angle to politely or perhaps impolitely inform us that South African refugees do not count. Specifically, the Boer does not count. I don't know how they're able to cope with such a dynamic narrative whiplash. You can't just deport MS13 gang members for the crime of human trafficking. These people should be embraced with open arms. ... You can't just embrace South African refugees with open arms. They're are they criminals? No, they're not criminals. But they're descended from criminals? No, they're not. But they're descended from racists. Something apartheid. The South African government used to be racist against black people, so fuck them. But the current South African government is racist against white people. They're singing about shooting and killing them, and they're letting it happen. It's not just segregation, it's, what's it called? Genocide! State-sponsored genocide. Well, yeah, but according to the current South African government, it's fine, this isn't happening, we didn't do nothing, so these people are not refugees. Okay, so what are they? Well, they're just immigrants, and you're not okay with that. I mean, they're not even illegal immigrants. They're doing it by the book. They're going through the airport and showing their papers and everything. Yeah, but but what? Yeah, but what, nigga? Say it. You know exactly what the difference is between Afrikaners and Hispanics, like the subject of this story. But, by the way, I'd like to remind you that Afrikaners and Hispanics are both of European stock. If West Africans and East Africans somehow fall under the same umbrella of just African Americans, then I fail to see how Dutch people and Spanish people are completely different races. Apparently, that's a line of latitude that cuts through the Alps and in the middle of France, and everything south of that line is not white, while everything north of that line is white. Oh, except the Irish. Apparently, the Irish don't count as white somehow, even though they're the closest you can get to literally white. So, how does it? Do Scandinavians count as white? We're not sure. We haven't figured that out. Scandinavians didn't do all that much colonizing, so we don't have much of a beef with them. So we don't know if we should call them white or not, because that's what beef means in this context. It means how white someone is. Bro, by the way, the Vikings raped and pillaged their way across a great deal of the east coast of Britain, establishing many colonial settlements. Does that not count? No! Colonizing means when Germanic people travel to brown people's countries. I'm terribly sorry. I didn't realize that that's what it was. Well, the Danish are largely Germanic. Do they count as white? I don't know. I don't care what happens north of the Alps. You can all kill each other as far as I'm concerned. But Spanish people and those descended from Spanish people didn't do nothing. Okay? Especially not the Spanish people who colonized Mexico and everything south of Mexico. So your boy Kilmar Garcia is innocent. He must be, because he's not white. So you see what we're dealing with. They don't give a fuck about colonialism. The Spaniards are just as guilty of colonialism as anyone else. They don't give a fuck about genocide. Genocide happens all the time in Africa, almost always at the hands of black people, and they don't give a fuck as long as it's not happening at the hands of white people. We are dealing with racists, folks. All they see is the color of your skin. All they care about is the color chart, like in the Family Guy meme. Although, well, it's not as though they'll let you off if you have a tan. A pearly white Japanese person is a good guy, but a Germanic person with a deep brown suntan is a bad guy. That seems to be it. Germanic people. And yes, that includes Anglo-Saxons. It especially includes Anglo-Saxons. We are the bad guys, no matter what happens, no matter what we do or don't do. And when it comes to the crunch, it also includes Irish people, Celtic people in general, and Nordic people in general, and Slavic people in general. Because these woke racists can't tell the difference. If you look like your ancestors are from anywhere north of the Alps and west of the Ural Mountains, you are the oppressors. End of story. This is where James Lindsay comes along and calls me the woke right, because I'm saying the same shit he's been saying for years. You think you're being oppressed? No, dickhead. I'm acknowledging that woke people think I am the oppressor because I'm Northwest European. History teaches us that narratives about the enemy oppressing you can lead you to commit atrocities against the perceived oppressors that by all accounts meet the definition of oppression. But I'm still not calling it oppression. None of us are. We know better than to do that. So we call it euphemisms for the most part. And I wish we didn't do that either, because euphemisms are counterproductive. It can all be explained as xenophobia and oikophobia, or xenophilia and oikophilia, if you prefer. And the sensible center between them that is neither one or the other, and they're all battling amongst each other for control of the center of the chessboard. And it would be a much fairer fight if it wasn't for all the euphemisms. I didn't capture your bishop. I liberated you from Christian nationalism. Fucking grow up, all of you. Call things what they are. If you don't call things what they are, we are doomed. And yes, I'm doing that thing where I mostly ignore whatever stories we're talking about, and I rant about whatever's on my mind at the time. You know the drill by now. I'm Dr. Random Cam. This is Munted News.
It is random
on Honey Badger Radio. That would be a good time to cut.
Yeah, that's okay.
We don't have any commercials.
We're gonna no commercials. We're gonna go into the next story, but let us know what you guys think about this one in the and I think it's relevant, Mike, that you brought that up. So Kanye West released a new song. No, I'm kidding. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna move on to the next one. We're not gonna talk about that. But I really wanted to. I really did. I wanted to, because I could make it about men's issues to some degree. The new Kanye song that everyone is losing their minds over, that I think is just hilarious and unfortunately quite catchy. I'm just saying. But I did get a super chow from Meredith G, so let me read that. Meredith G gives us $5 and says, HBR News 502, honey for the Badgers. But no, the problem is diversity, cries the former Secretary of Transportation. My fingers will be crossed for Brian's travel this week. Be safe. Well, thank you, Meredith. I feel like I should look to see who I'm flying with, to see like how, because I had to go with the cheapest I could afford, because I couldn't afford like anything crazy. Let me just see who I'm flying with. I'm just curious. I don't know. It's up here. I'm just curious, real quick. So anyway, I'll get back to you guys with the info. But I had to go with the cheapest thing. So, okay. So, Soros-funded groups, including NGOs backed by the Open Society Foundation, filed a class action lawsuit to block President Trump's anti-child trafficking reforms, according to an article from the Daily Fetched. These reforms, launched in February of 2025, aim to prevent the trafficking of migrant children by ensuring the Department of Health and Human Services verifies the legal status of sponsors before releasing unaccompanied minors to them. The lawsuit, supported by Democracy Forward, argues that the reforms are unlawful and seeks an injunction to halt their implementation. This legal action coincides with another suit by the same group to prevent the deportation of foreign gang members, highlighting, well, what they really meant, what their intentions are over immigration policy under the Trump administration. The article notes that HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Recently uncovered a massive human trafficking operation within the department, accusing the previous administration of delivering unaccompanied children to criminals and transnational organizations using the UAC, Unaccompanied Alien Child Program, as a, quote, white glove delivery service, end quote. The Soros-backed NGOs, tied to a network established by George Soros in the 1980s and now influenced by his son, pictured here, Alex Soros, are depicted as opposing these reforms to maintain their influence over immigration policy. The piece also references a new book, The Heir, Inside the Not-So-Secret Network of Alex Soros, suggesting a deeper look into the Soros family's role in such advocacy, framing the lawsuit as part of a broader ideological conflict over border security and child protection measures. And also in related news, to some degree, James O'Keefe, who you guys might know from Project Veritas, but now of the O'Keefe Media Network, because Project Veritas pushed him out of his own company, but apparently he's going to buy them back anyway. He has just started showing video footage of the interior of Jeffrey Epstein's mansion on the island, the Virgin Islands, the I think it's Lolita Island or whatever they call it. So that just as an aside, and it's weird. So, I'm just saying it's weird. So anyway, Hannah, you're the one who I believe sent me this story. So I don't know if you want to say anything to it.
Yeah, the thing about this that kind of struck me here is if you left your children with a stranger to babysit, like not somebody that was certified, not like at a child care center where there's supposed to be some degree of vetting, not a stranger there, but just like, some random person from the neighborhood, say, hey, can you make sure my kids don't get hit by a car and they eat healthy food while I'm at work, and I'll pay you this money. CPS would take them. All right. If you left them home alone, CPS would take them. Right? Child Protective Services would be down your throat and up your butt at the same time. They would meet themselves going out as they came in. Right? That would be it. But your federal government takes children who may have been taken from their parents against their will and their parents' will, that may have been kidnapped and dragged here against their will as a result of Obama-era policies that encouraged the use of children to get across the border unchallenged, and the use of children as drug mules, and sold, right? They allow children to come here and be sold, little boys. This includes a significant percentage of little boys who are brought to the United States and sold. And we have been lied to about it. And the men of the Border Patrol who have tried to protect these children have been demonized for it. And now that the Trump administration is finally taking action to try to protect these children, we have one of the biggest funders of left-wing DEI, gobbledygook, gender war ideas and organizations and so on, is suing to stop it, to stop the government from stopping child trafficking. If there was ever any evidence that this organization, the Soros organization, is an evil organization, this is it. Men are risking their lives to protect and save these children. And these guys are suing to put them back in danger. And we have been lectured for years about this. This is not happening. This is not a problem. There's not an organized effort. There's not a worldwide organized child trafficking ring trying to protect itself. Oh yeah, then why do you want to keep the government from doing things to protect children? Why do you want to make sure that the people that the children are getting transferred to after they get across the border, if they don't come with their parents, are vetted? Why do you want to make sure that doesn't happen? Why do you want to make sure that things that you would go to jail for if it was your children are happening to these children? And when I saw this story, my mind went immediately back to a story out of Ohio where this 10-year-old girl was used to try to demonize anti-abortion laws, right? Oh, she's 10 years old and she's pregnant and she had to cross state lines to get an abortion because the state of Ohio was going to force her to give birth. Except who forced her to get pregnant? Because somebody did. A 10-year-old cannot consent to that. right? And so, of course, the public began investigating into this, every bit of information that they could find out. And what did we find out? We found out that the woman that she lived with might not be her mother, that the man who was suspected to have impregnated her wasn't related, but was there, and that this kid might not be a legal immigrant herself, that nobody in the situation might be legal. And as soon as that information started coming out, all of the story just vanished. Nobody was talking about it anymore. No more discussion, right? Because all of a sudden now it's an immigration issue. Obviously, the child, if she was trafficked, this wouldn't have happened to her if she hadn't been dragged to this country. And obviously, if the man was an illegal immigrant, he wouldn't have been there to do it to her if he hadn't gotten into this country. And if the woman she lived with was prostituting her, which is what it sounded like from the bit of information that we could get, maybe that wouldn't have happened either if the people that these children are being placed with were being vetted. Right? People wonder why men aren't protecting women and children today. People wonder that out loud as if it's true that men aren't protecting women and children today, because they are. We see it every day that they are, and they get in trouble for it. But this is why people wonder, because every time they do, somebody steps forward to try to stop them, or criticize them, or hate on them for it, or demonize them for it by twisting it around into something that it's not. This is important. A lot of crime happens around this trafficking, and there's a lot of violence as part of that crime. As bad as it is that there is violence against these children, there is also violence used to hide what is going on and to impose participation on both children and adults to make sure that it continues. So this is something that we should be supporting. That if you want to provide a home, to be a sponsor for a child who is here alone from another country, you should have to qualify. You should have to show that that child's going to be safe with you and cared for, and that when the child's parents are found and the child can be returned, that you're going to return that child to the state unharmed and untraumatized. And that's not happening without this change. But yeah, it really did interest me that the same groups that are backing things like Black Lives Matter and the Women's March and all of the other
Antifa and all that.
Antifa
Yeah.
and all that, they're the ones that sued to make sure that the government didn't make it harder for child traffickers to take those children and disappear with them.
Mm-hmm. Mike, do you want to say anything?
No, I already covered this. Apparently, it's human trafficking when you're trafficking the correct humans.
Yes.
And it's not when you're trafficking the non-humans. Like you can't bring genuine refugees over here because that's human trafficking, and you can't human traffic those other kinds of humans because that. I don't know what I'm saying. I didn't prepare anything for this.
Oh, that's okay. We got plenty. We got more to get into.
I think I already covered it in my long rant in the last.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, they're kind of related stories, so I get that.
You remember the old "We Only Bomb Brown People" rant from oh, you guys know who I'm talking about now. I can see his face in my head. It's awful.
I don't know.
He's famous for the 7 words. God,
Oh, George Carlin, the original Redditor?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yes, George Carlin. Well,
Yeah.
apparently we also only traffic brown children.
Well, all I will say about this is that one thing that I know that this is not new for this channel because we say this all the time, but just as a reminder, human traffickers, a surprising number of them are women, and a surprising number of the victims of child trafficking are boys.
Yeah.
Surprising to those who have preconceived notions, not surprising to us. And that
what people don't understand is that there is a shitload more trafficking for slave labor than there is for sex slavery.
Right, which people all automatically assume sex slavery when they think of human trafficking. But it's not only that.
It actually happens in the Middle East, by the way.
And boys are trafficked for both.
Mm-hmm.
And so are men.
A lot of people look into gender demographics in the Middle East and they go, oh, wow, there's more males in the United Arab Emirates than there are females. That must be because they hate females. No, bro, it's because they import male slaves, largely from India, to build their fucking giant towers and shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. You already know what we think about these NGOs and the people who tend to fund them. All right. So this is a surprisingly political episode. There's a lot of like geopolitics stuff going on, but it's related because we have several. There's war brewing in different parts of the world, and I want to try to highlight the places where there is an attempt to cool the temperature. We just saw that India and Pakistan have gone hot. I haven't covered much of that right now, but of course, in any conflict, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, or the incidents now going on between India and Pakistan, it's going to be men that are the ones going to be dying, right? Like whatever they are, Pakistani men, Indian men, Russian men, Ukrainian men, Jewish men or Israeli men, and Palestinian men. So anytime someone tries to come in and make some peace, I am open to talking about that because I think that is war is probably the men's issue. Okay, like dying in war.
Yep.
Yeah, that's men. Okay, so rumors continue to swirl surrounding President Donald Trump's trip to the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Trump landed in Riyadh earlier today. The stated goal of this trip is to improve relations and work on U.S. investments and economic priorities. Before leaving, Trump was gifted a multi-million-dollar luxury plane from Qatar, which alone has drawn scrutiny and criticism. But the latest rumor, if true, could dwarf anything else happening at these events. A Gulf diplomatic source stated the following to the media line. President Donald Trump will issue a declaration regarding the state of Palestine and American recognition of it, and that there will be the establishment of a Palestinian state without the presence of Hamas. U.S. figureheads such as the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, were quick to deny these statements. However, many point to Trump's worsening relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a possible reason for such declaration. I'd like to add to that the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu has worsened due to differing approaches to regional challenges. Trump doesn't want war. He doesn't want America going to war. He wants, if anything, if there's a conflict, he wants to settle it as easily and quickly as possible. He is a deal maker at the end of the day, and he was trying to work something out. But Netanyahu's not happy about that, and there are some tensions there. So he wants to rebuild the region. A major point of contention is Trump's refusal to support military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities because Netanyahu's trying to get us into a war with Iran as well, favoring instead a diplomatic deal to prevent Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons, a move that has irritated Netanyahu, who is skeptical of any agreement with Iran. Additionally, Trump's public comments, made twice in the week prior to May 11th, have further rankled Netanyahu, according to U.S. officials and Middle Eastern diplomats, highlighting a growing divide despite their historically close ties. The Washington Post adds that Trump is sidelining Netanyahu on key issues like Iran nuclear talks and the conflict with Houthi rebels. notably during Trump's first major overseas trip of his second term, where he visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE without stopping in Jerusalem, a move seen as a snub. This tension traces back to past grievances, such as Netanyahu's 2020 annexation plans for the West Bank, which derailed Trump's Middle East peace plan, and his congratulation of Biden's election victory, which Trump resented. The Times of Israel notes that U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee's dismissal of these reports as reckless and irresponsible. The broader evidence from U.S. officials and diplomats suggests real friction, with Israeli opposition leaders like Lapid claiming Americans are fed up with Netanyahu. As of May 13, 2025, these strategic and personal differences continue to strain their relationship. So,
all I want is for someone to admit to me that Israel is basically one giant military base. Not just an American military base, it's a sort of Euro-American, Western military base, and that its function is to keep a militant eye on what we call the Muslim world. I call it the Muslim world because that's all it is at this point, a balkanized collection of countries loosely tied together by Islam, but not unified by it under the same flag. It's mostly Sunni, with a troublemaking Shia state in the form of Iran, with a few pepperings of other denominations that no one's heard of. It is not a caliphate, a unified mass of a billion Muslims, like what the Ottoman Empire might have become if it was still around today. One of the only good things that happened as a result of World War I was the defeat and dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. Make no mistake, Islam is a religion that is hell-bent on world domination, and it was well on its trajectory to achieving world domination before it got tricked into playing itself in World War I, those short 100 or so years ago. So, frankly, it makes perfect sense to put a war machine sentinel in the heart of the Middle East to make sure the caliphate never happens again. And like I said, if everyone could just admit that this is what Israel is for, I could at least entertain that idea. But don't bullshit me. Don't tell me that Israel is there so that Jews can have a homeland. You could have chosen anywhere for Jews to have a homeland, and
New Jersey.
Yeah, you chose smack.
You did.
Philadelphia.
Instead, you chose smack bang in the middle of the Middle East, surrounded by millions of Muslims who have an insatiable religious hatred of Jews. Like their holy book literally tells them that their win condition is when they genocide the Jews, and the rocks themselves cry out, "There is a Jew behind me." And I'm like, don't make me laugh, folks. You could have put Jews in Canada or Wyoming or something, or in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. Anywhere would have been safer than where you put them. It's like trying to safely house some ants in the world's largest anteater enclosure. Israel is not a safe haven for Jews. It is a military base. Everyone knows. Everyone has eyes to see. It's fucking obvious. And so I really hope Trump understands this. I really hope his advisors and military generals have told him this obvious truth, if he hadn't figured it out already. I hope he doesn't blow the whole operation just because Netanyahu pissed him off. Just to be clear, I'm not on Team Israel or Team Palestine. Palestine seems to be full of Islamic zealots who wanted Hamas to be in charge. And if you leave them to their own devices, they'll just install a different version of Hamas with a different name. And Israel is just a gigantic military base. It doesn't need any more territory. It just needs to be there. It just needs to be large enough to hold enough mega nukes to glass everything within a 1,000-mile radius when the time comes. So yeah, the two-state solution is fine. And if that's what Trump is gunning for, that's fine. And frankly, if he wants to reduce the amount of money the US is giving to Israel from whatever it is, $100 billion a year to like $1 million a year, that would be ideal. Like I said, you already have the nukes. You already have the deterrent. Do you have the ability to press a button and melt 500 million Muslims whenever you want to? Good. Our job is done here. Just to be clear, I'm not saying you should melt 500 million Muslims, but it would sure as hell be better than sending all of those Muslims to Europe. So I don't know, man. Maybe I should stop talking before I get myself in trouble.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, well, I think that what Trump is doing is actually really interesting. He already suggested doing this with Palestine, and he's already done something like this in Ukraine, where essentially, as a deterrent, he's like, we're going to build something for America in this country, and what that means is American jobs. And which is obviously good for us, but it also means an American presence in those countries. So if Putin gets an idea to like do some damage, now he has to take into account that he's not just, harming Ukrainians, but he is harming Americans directly. So he has to be cautious or basically become more diplomatic in dealing with that dispute of land, which I think, in the case of Ukraine, they're just going to have to give some of it up because that's just what it is. Like there's a history there that Putin tried to explain to Tucker Carlson that goes way back. But the point is that Trump saying we're going to get some minerals and we're going to do this and that, he's basically turning it into a real estate thing, which is what he does. And he's putting an American presence there, which is sort of like, a bit of a tanking move where Putin's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to strike them because then I could hurt not just Americans, but civilian Americans, like American civilians. And he's doing the same thing in Palestine. He wants to, well, if this is true, which I don't see, I think it's possible that there will be a two-state solution. I think that Trump doesn't want to go to war. He doesn't want any of that. And I know that from what I've seen, Netanyahu wants that land. He wants to take, more, occupy more with Israel. But basically, if he says, well, we're going to build some American stuff there. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to make it a state now. Now they have to deal with that, right? So it's kind of a smart thing. It makes them look like the aggressors if they act on that. And it makes them into clear, say, opponents to peace. And that won't look good, that will not look good for them. So I think that might be the plan if it's true, and I could see that. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. I don't think Trump wants war at all, and whether it's because he cares about his legacy as president or he genuinely doesn't want that, I think he genuinely does not want that. I think that's like the reason why he used to get on all these talk shows before everybody hated him for some reason. Everybody loved him. They were always asking him, what would you do if you were president? Are you going to run? And he was like, I don't know. And then he does it, and suddenly everybody makes him the evil orange man. So I think that at the end of the day, if this is true, this is humongous. And don't tell me that if like Harris was in office, the situation would be the same, because there's no fucking way. So anyway, those are my only thoughts.
If Harris was in office, this would be the slaughter would continue indefinitely because it is being used to fleece the American public, among other things, for other purposes. It is being used to fleece the American public for every tax dollar they can wring out of us. We need this to support Israel. We need this to support Israel, our ally Israel. And then, of course, every so often they got to satisfy the pro-Palestinian side of the argument in the United States, where we have no reason to be part of this, and say, well, we have to have sanctions against Israel for some of the things that they're doing, when what we are basically doing is interfering in a fight between the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is not our place to interfere. If we can help create peace, that's good. We shouldn't be helping at any point to create any more war.
Exactly.
No more dead men, and no more men being ordered by their superiors to commit atrocities. No more men being encouraged by their superiors to commit atrocities. And then they have to live with that for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Give peace a chance, folks. All we are saying is destroy the House of War so that the House of Peace can take over the world. That's how it's done, right? Can't argue with that.
Hopefully it'll last more than 7 years.
Arguing with that would be Islamophobic. I should actually
or anti-Semitic. One of those.
Hopefully it'll last way more than 7 years.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna have to change my mind about a few things if it doesn't.
Let us know what you guys think about this one now again, this is not like confirmed, but it could be, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this will be settled in a peaceful way, and I'm glad that if this is true, I'm glad that Netanyahu's getting snubbed for this, because I think that he wants to use the United States as a proxy. But anyway, we'll see where it goes from there. We'll follow up as we learn more. All right, now let's get into the last story. So, you guys probably heard about these sculptures that have been showing up. This is a small one, but to me, it's a big deal. Because it's about art. And I think that there's something important with this that's going on. So, there is a sculptor named Thomas J. Price. And he has a 12-foot bronze sculpture installed in Times Square. Not this one. This is a different one. This is his website, and where I can look at this stuff. So I can show you guys. Here it is. In Times Square, this one here. It's called Grounded in the Stars. It's a 12-foot bronze sculpture installed in Times Square, reimagining, which, according to Mr. Price, reimagines the concept of monumentality by diverging from the traditional focus on powerful white male figures typically seen in public art. Unlike the conventional statues in Duffy Square, such as those of white men on high pedestals, this is according to Price, okay? Price's work portrays an obese black woman standing with hands on her hips in a contrapposto pose, embodying a, quote, quiet gravity and grandeur, end quote, that invites viewers to engage with her at ground level on a low, wide base. This deliberate choice of subject and placement challenges the historical bias of monumental art, which often celebrates dominant cultural figures by instead highlighting a marginalized individual whose presence in such a space disrupts expectations and fosters a sense of empathy and connection. The sculpture is part of Price's broader artistic narrative, also seen in his series, which features large-scale depictions of black men and women in casual attires like hoodies as part of the concurrent Resilience of Scale exhibit at Hauser & Wirth in New York, on view until June 14th, 2025. By presenting these everyday figures in monumental form, Price questions who deserves to be immortalized in public spaces, emphasizing diversity and emotional resonance over traditional notions of heroism and power. His work, including Grounded in the Stars, aligns with principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, aiming to redefine monumentality as a celebration of ordinary humanity and underrepresented identities, thus encouraging viewers to reflect on cultural representation in a new light. So, all right, I'm going to show you guys some of these, and I want to give you what I know is going on here, just as a reminder of this. So this is the one in Times Square. It's just like it's not representing any individual person specifically at all. These are intentionally abstract images of women. Yes, they're black, and they're basically being presented in these public spaces, out in the open. Here's a guy on his phone, distance within, a place beyond, a woman on her phone. Let me show you a couple of other ones, and I'm going to tell you what's really going on here. I want to remind you guys. This one is in in Florence. It's in Florence, okay, Italy. This is another. This is like the exhibit. They move them around, in different places. And this one is also in Italy somewhere, Vecchio, Florence, Palazzo Vecchio. And she's on her phone. So what's going on here? So do you guys remember when activists and rioters were tearing down statues all over the country, and they were saying that it was because they were of racist white men? So when we put up monuments, and that's what this guy's doing. He's challenging what he calls monumentality. So the idea of monuments. Monuments are representative of specific figures in history that did great things. They're like great people of history, most of whom were men, because that's what it took to do that, right? So you had like military leaders, writers, speech givers, political figures, generals, kings, whatever. Important people. I think, one of them was fucking Frederick Douglass, who basically just was like an escaped slave or a former slave that wrote a lot, was fortunately educated. And but these were all like generals and leaders and great men of history, okay? And this person is essentially completely inverting that. He's not doing great men of history. He's doing like completely unknown generic humans that could be anyone and elevating them to a monumental status. This is intended to demoralize people. This is why it exists. This is why it's put it in public. People will look at it, really pathetic people will look at it and say, oh, I feel represented now. Like, I've always wanted a monument to myself, but I didn't do anything worthy of that. And I don't like that other people historically who probably made tremendous sacrifices actually got recognition and got a monument put up or a memorial or whatever. But I don't like that because it makes me feel small. And so I need something like this to exist so I can feel like somebody, even though that's not me either. It is inherently, ideologically, it is inherently feminist, because it's basically saying we are all, part of this collective identity of woman, because most of these are women, not all of them. But the point of it is to say there are no great men. They're like, none of that happened. All there is this. And this is intentionally profane. It doesn't look bad. I'm not saying it's poorly crafted, but it's intentionally profane and anti, let's say, meritocratic art. It's not made to inspire. It's made to demean. It's made to make you feel small. And it's actually literally made to make you feel small, because you're supposed to look up to this woman because you can see the scale of this thing. And even though she is nobody remarkable at all, not known for anything, you're supposed to feel small compared to her. So I'm passionate about art stuff because it's where my background is. But I know that this is designed to demoralize you, and that's why it gets funded. That's why it gets put out in public spaces. That's why it gets to be put all over the world, the Western world, by the way, like European countries. If fucking Italy, like it could be in the Vatican if they let them in. But it's like in all of the great sort of like, Western epicenters, New York City, Times Square, these plazas in Europe. And that's what the purpose of it is. And I just want you to know, this is intended to demoralize. That's why it exists. That's what, when they say I'm challenging this thing, they're just telling you they're destroying this thing. That's what they want to do. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, finish your rant.
I think I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm just saying that great men did great things, and now they destroyed that, and now in its absence, they replaced it with this.
Yeah, if it was about fat black women, why not Harriet Tubman? Harriet Tubman was a badass. She did things. Do you have any? Did you already have a bunch of statues of Harriet Tubman in the square? No. So why didn't you just build a statue of Harriet Tubman? Because Harriet Tubman did things. This is not about doing things. It's just about being things, having never done anything. And this goes back a long time. For like 20,000 years ago, the only statuettes you can find that people carved were of fat women. They weren't even particularly fat black women, but I mean, it goes back so far that you can't even tell the difference. People were obsessed with fat women because they represented fertility. They were just like Easter, you know. They were symbols of fertility. They didn't have to do anything. Nature produced them, and so they were good enough by themselves. And so they just sat there on their thrones, being nature's perfect creation. And you all just have to do whatever I want, because I am nature's perfect creation, and I don't have to do anything, because I've already achieved everything I have to achieve just by being. And that's, the one in Times Square isn't the worst. The ones we're looking at now, the ones where they're just looking at their phone.
I know, right?
What the fuck even is that? How does anyone even defend
this
that?
By the way, this is how you money launder. This is used for money laundering.
This is money laundering.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
But well, and to be fair, Harriet Tubman wasn't fat. In fact, she was tiny. She was like 5'2" and buff. But she kind of had to be for what she was doing, going back and forth from north to south over and over again. And she couldn't have done it alone. But nobody else probably could have done what she did either. So they wouldn't make a statue to her. There are people that have made statues to her, but these people wouldn't make a statue to her. Do you know why? She did the unthinkable in their eyes. In order to achieve what she wanted to achieve, she worked with white people. She worked with white men, in fact. Just sin of sins. Right? She was part of a team.
She couldn't have done it if she didn't work with white men. It would have been impossible for her to accomplish it. Yes.
That's right. And it doesn't mean that she's not great. It means that she wasn't alone in what she did. And it doesn't mean that she didn't have great courage. It means that even great courage needs support. And this kind of thing, the reason that we make statues of people who exhibit greatness is because great courage needs support and encouragement. It needs to be loved in order for humans to maintain it. It's a very fragile thing. It takes a lot of work to continue to have faith that you're going to achieve a goal that everyone and everything around you seems to be in opposition to. When you're doing something that is surrounded on all sides by hate being pointed right at it and rage being pointed right at it, and you're alone for much of the time in what you're doing, you need to have that memory that someday people will be happy about this. Someday people will recognize that it was a good thing. And if you don't have either a team and a support network or that understanding that sometime in the future people are going to be glad that the changes you're making today took place, you lose hope and you lose faith. It takes a lot more to maintain it under those circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
You can lose your way, right? And you can lose your purpose. Like, what good does it do to fight for something that nobody is ever going to be happy about? So we make statues, and we have memorial days, we have holidays, we have history weeks and months and years where we remember for the long term, these groups of people had a set of great things that they did. They worked very hard to make them happen. And we love them for it because we deeply appreciate what we have now because of what we know they did. You really can't say that about some chick standing on the street corner looking at her phone. Right? So this really is an attack on hope.
Yes.
The sad thing is, what they've done by targeting Black people is pretend that out of everybody, the idea of hope is somehow an attack on Black people. And history has so many great Black people that have done things to improve society, invented things, or helped to invent things that moved society forward, worked hard like Harriet Tubman did to rescue people from horrible situations, sacrificed themselves, changed the way that we think, not just about Black people, but about all human beings. And they chose to anonymize these statues and attack probably the greatest mover and shaker of Black success in American history. I think that if anybody should be upset about these statues, the people who should be the most upset about it should be Black people.
Well, again, it's designed to demoralize everybody, and that's why it's so caught up in well, I mean, it doesn't represent anything except the present and a present moment. And I'm sure the artist would make some, a lot of art is basically like marketing your bullshit so that people will buy into the idea that it's deeper than it actually is. So he just has like, I believe he made a claim that it was something about like living in the moment and blah, 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 but it's all bullshit. Like, none of it's true. The point of it is to demoralize. That's it. That's all it does. That's why, like, look at it like this, okay? Behind this one that we're looking at right now, there are these like Greek sculptures, and I think that they're probably figures from myth, from Greek mythology, maybe even from history. Most likely, they're mythological figures. I think that's a David right there, or at least it looks like David. But these are all representative of something. You go to a Catholic church, you'll see, Mary and Jesus, and what they look like when you see them, because there's a purpose behind it, and what those sculptures represent, an important person, whether it's a person from mythology or religion or history. This person is nobody. And essentially that's what you're being made to look at. You're basically made to look at yourself or this and see yourself in it, which is nobody. And I think that because the artist is Black, he makes them Black, but it's also a dare. Like, I dare you criticize my art because I get to call you racist if you do. So it's a trap. The whole thing is intended to demoralize you and make you feel like there's no point in anything. And it's not made to last. Like, these old Greek sculptures that are, they're basically nudes, whatever, guys wrestling, maybe like the Pegasus. I think there's one of Perseus holding the head of Medusa. We know that, like, just by me saying it, you guys know what that looks like in your head because you've seen it, right? You know what it looks like because it resonates with us. These stories are very old, they're ancient, and we remember them. And part of how they are expressed is through art. But this sculpture, no one is going to remember this in 2 years. But it's okay because it's already served its purpose. It's already done the damage by existing. And the guy's already, used it to launder millions of dollars probably. And it's already done its damage. So like the ease to which like art like this, which is degenerate, is intended to degenerate our culture, to make us less able to appreciate true beauty. That's the purpose of this. It's really easy. You do it and then you can take it out of the limelight. Like, we don't have to see this piece of art ever again because the damage is done. but something beautiful that is made to last forever and not even be seen as something out of time. Like, we don't look at it and say, oh, that's so, 12th century. No, we just say, wow, that's beautiful. I know it's old, but it doesn't matter because it still looks good, right? It was made with care. It was made with a desire to say something that mattered, something important, something universal, something true, and something beautiful. This is not that. This is the opposite of that. This is something that is designed to damage our hearts, and it does that, like, just by existing. And after this installation is done, we'll probably never see this guy's art again until the next event is needed, and then he'll do something different. But it's all intended to damage us. It's not here to make the world better. It's supposed to demoralize. So I just want to drive that home. That's the purpose of this art. It only exists to demoralize you. So this should just be scoffed at. I mean, like, the way I see it, I think that we might as well go all the way in and, like, have, like, one of these, like, maybe this one here. Maybe her head should be, like, on some kind of mechanism that makes her neck roll, so that she's going, because that's, like, that's all that you can do with it. There's nothing you can do with it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I've dragged this out, but I'm just saying that there is still beautiful art, and if you can, and you can make the time for it, look up some old art, like old sculpture, Greek sculpture, Roman sculpture, Renaissance stuff, whatever, the Impressionists, Expressionists. But this contemporary garbage is designed to demoralize, all of it. And it's all because it goes back to, like, the turn of the century from the beginning of the 20th century. And ever since then, it's just been like this elitist hellhole of money laundering and political activism disguised as art. And it's designed to demoralize you. It's designed to turn you into a person with no soul that just wants to, be served by the state. They're basically statist propaganda in this form. I mean, that's what I think. But anyway,
it makes me sad. At one point I was thinking about studying to become a painter, but then I ran out of money.
Yeah. I get it. You can look at, like, the art, like, Chicago's a lot of things, but they do have a really nice art museum, the Museum of the Art Institute of Chicago, and they added a modern wing before I left, which sucks. Don't go there. But if you go to the regular part, there's a lot of beautiful stuff, and there's a huge room of Monet's. They're not even really my favorite part of that. It's more like the Van Gogh and the Toulouse-Lautrec stuff is really nice. Yeah. And there's Japanese prints, if you like the Japanese prints, on rice paper, and the Baroque stuff, which is almost all of it's religious art, but it's so well done. You're like, how did they do this?
It's like how funny it is how much hippies love Salvador Dali. And yeah, Salvador Dali was great.
Yeah.
But he was a literal fascist, right? There aren't many people in history who were literal fascists. But yeah. Dali was one of them, because fascism was, like, literally formed in Italy and Spain with Mussolini and Franco, and Dali was literally on board with Franco, and he did all of those amazing works while completely on board with literal fascism, the thing that leftists nowadays, like, that term that they throw at everyone that they don't like because they don't know what the fuck fascism was. But Dali was literally a fascist, and they're all going, "Oh, this was amazing art. Look, what was it saying about society?" Well,
yeah.
It was from a fascist perspective. So
yeah,
he had all kinds of problematic things about him from their perspective. He also had some struggles.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they also really celebrated Andy Warhol, but look what happened to him. so
I think you rarely get great work without some sort of struggles like that, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like a way to wrestle with your demons.
Yep.
But okay, so I got is that a super chat or a rumble rant? I can't remember anymore. But I got something from Albatross. Thank you. And he gave us $5. I think it was a super chat. And he says, these statues just look mildly annoyed with life. How is this inspiring or uplifting to men or women of any type? Well, no, like I said, it's designed to be depressing. That's why it is depressing, because that's what it's doing, exactly the thing that it's set out to do. So I guess if that's the goal, success. But anyway, that was it. I just wanted to rant about that for a bit. So now that's it for the show. We're going to head into the patron show now, where we're going to be continuing our look at this article. Now comes the womanosphere, the anti-feminist media telling women to be thin, fertile, and Republican, which is kind of hilarious. And
well, they could fuck off because I'm old and fat, and I'm definitely not very Republican anymore.
Yeah,
and you're a
fat
man.
And
oh yes,
independent.
I'm supposed to be a man.
According to Twitter, you're a man.
According to Twitter, yeah, I get a sex change every day on Twitter. It's fascinating.
Well, and it didn't cost the government anything.
That's right.
So anyway, we're gonna head into the patron show.
For Twitter trolls.
Unless they are. We're gonna head into the patron show. So again, if you want to join us, become a badger by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe, and then you'll be able to watch all the additional content, of which there is a lot. But for now, I hope to see you guys there. But for now, I'm gonna have to wrap it up. Thank you, Hannah and Mike, for joining us. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you guys in the next one. See you next Tuesday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.